propagating this idea that our nation is the best no matter what, I would agree that that should be avoided. I don't think we should be talking about like the greatness of the country.
I definitely don't agree that America is the best country on the earth. I think that we still need a lot of like fixing.
I think it's a dangerous mindset to teach young people that, because I think that's the reason why a lot of people grow up to be kind of extremists and like really nationalistic.
Oh, I hope stupidity is not contagious. But why would someone their age think this country is exceptional? They got to the party late. The house is crowded. They don't know these new people who just keep strolling in. Fights are breaking out. The keg is almost empty. And the authorities are on their way to shut it down. They arrived as this once great party started winding down. And sadly, to them, something horrible perpetrated against us is just another opportunity to talk about how bad we are. So, unlike Jesse's hair, history is a malleable thing. Like that word. Who teaches it and how they teach it can determine how your kid interprets the world. And if they're too young and fearful to call BS, it's easy to be brainwashed. Just recently it worked for less cops will make us safer. So what would I tell them right now? I was in New York City when it happened. It was as surreal as it was devastating, because it's the first time you felt engulfed in horror. Well, second, if you were married. You're in the heart of evil. It's not a movie. It's not something you can't walk out of because it sucks. And you're in it and it changes you forever. The same way a person is changed forever if they are a victim of a violent crime. You can't have these baby thoughts about silly things. You can't just shrug it off as something we deserve because we're so mean and powerful. That day was something else, and the something else is called evil. Sadly, that's forgotten as many now occupy their brains with like gender pronouns and self-obsessed grievance. But I'm pretty sure if you were on the 95th floor of a burning building and the fireman rescuing you called you the wrong pronoun, you'd let it slide. Some events in life have a way of putting things in perspective, the difference between what's important and what's trivial. 9/11 was one of those events. But this 20-year conflict, for some, has been back-page news, including politicians and media. Not as interesting as Britney, Kaepernick, or Black Lives Matter. There's too much stuff to think about, and a lot of it really doesn't require thinking at all. Just feeling angry and looking important and saying what you're told to say. We've insulated the country, successfully, from our conflicts. But by insulating them, they now have no visceral response to this moment, this event that affects millions of people. It's so good here, people don't even know it's good. We assign false bravery to the loudest voices. Who can cry the hardest? Who can claim the most victimhood? This relates to 9/11. On that day, almost 20 years ago, we were reminded that we were Americans, not blacks, whites, gays, trans, non-binary woodland creatures. We didn't proclaim our separate categories. We were Americans. Too bad it took 3,000 innocent souls violently snatched from us to remind us of that. That's not tribalism or nationalism. It's understanding what you share with each other, that you were attacked for being you. Fact is, in 2001, we were Americans. But in 20 years' time, we've been coerced by a profit-seeking media to reject that. You could argue these entities have done more psychological damage to this country than any outside enemy, creating a whole industry off of hating America. Because inciting wars between each other means profits for companies, power for activists, and a distraction from real evil. On the 20th anniversary of 9/11, we call people who don't want a vaccine terrorists. Fact is, as long as we are at each other's throats, who needs terrorists? Al-Qaeda did 9/11. The rest is a self-inflicted gunshot wound as a result of friendly fire. Let's welcome tonight's guest. If she had it her way, she'd be co-hosting The Four. America's newsroom co-anchor and the 5 co-host, Dana Perino. There you go. He can kill a man 30 different ways, 29 of them with his leather pants. Retired Green Beret Master Sergeant of the Hollywood Weapons on the Outdoor Channel, Jerry Shepard. She is the target market for Zoloft gummies. Fox News contributor Kat Timm. When asked what Tyrus does for a living, his opponent said, "Beats me." my massive sidekick in the NWA World Television Champion, Thomas. All right. Terry? Yes, sir. Like me, you are a hero. After 9/11, I went on and did some things for my country. What did you do after 9/11?
So I've been out of the this is perfect tee up. Years I got out from active duty. I did it for almost on the square. I was a working actor in Manhattan, and we got attacked. So I re-enlisted in the National Guard Green Berets, and I was October 2001, and I retired in October 2016. So thinking to myself, okay, we're at war. What do I do? I'm not telling people it was the right decision for me. It created my career in one way, but also opened up other opportunities. And after 9/11, my mom said to me, she goes, I haven't seen you look this happy in a long time. And I go, well, I'm around the guys I love. And so that's what I did. I actually am not interested. I've never been interested in hearing how people felt during 9/11. I don't really care what you were doing when it happened. What did you freaking do afterwards? How did you change yourself? Did you get smarter? Were you kinder? Did you stop voting for people who are working for your demise? You know, did you pay attention? And I think a lot of people, right off the bat, they did, but then they sort of stopped. And I want to say something else, too, about the young people. We just saw a clip of really, really not very smart and soft-shell crab human beings. There's a whole other side of our country that's not that. Right? It's the young studs that I saw coming in that would put on their body armor and go down the road knowing they were going to get hit. These 19-year-old kids. And when we just lost the 13 recently, everybody was like, oh, they're so young.
Right.
Who did you think were fighting your wars?
Yeah.
Did you think it was Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders or even Donald Trump? No, it's young people. It's young people doing it. And so hard times make hard men. Hard men make good times. Good times make soft men. And we're now on the stage where soft men make hard times. So that's what's coming.
You know, that's amazing. But I think the take-home message here, the real tragedy. I'm going to tell you the real tragedy is that 9/11 killed Terry's acting career. Think of all, Dana, think of all the movies we miss.
He was a stage actor.
Yes.
I really feel it was a mercy killing. It was a mercy killing.
First of all,
He's on TV.
I love you, hate you, not a fan of you anymore, and you,
I got nothing to say.
terrible people. But Dana's the best. Shame on you. Fair. So Dana, like me, you're a hero.
Yeah.
I mean, your life changed because you ended up coming to DC, correct?
Yeah. My life is, yeah. I look back on this day. It's been a lot of reflections this week, and I think that the fact that we are remembering and commemorating this day, this 20 years, it feels like it's a milestone. And it is something where you have some people, like I read in the paper, that like, we just got to move on.
Yeah.
We don't need to have these memorials. And then I've been watching some of the documentaries that have been done, and look at what the people went through.
Yeah.
And imagine suggesting that the United States no longer needs to teach what happened at Pearl Harbor.
Right.
Or what happened to Martin Luther King Jr. Or what happened to JFK. Or what happened to George Floyd.
Right.
I mean, would anybody suggest that you shouldn't do that? But this one they wanted to let go because they don't want to think America's exceptional anymore.
Or that America is America is the victim here. They don't want to hear that either because we're the bad guy. All those other things you mentioned, you could argue is America's fault, right?
Absolutely, you could.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah.
And I think that Connie Rice has a piece in the Wall Street Journal in which she says, if we don't continue to do this, if we don't live up to never forget, we are doomed to repeat it, which is not as eloquent a way of saying what Terry ended with. Because...
Well, he's an actor.
And I would say that it is really interesting to think about all of those young people that we saw on the video. I could watch that all day.
Yeah.
But you think about the young people that died outside the Kabul airport, and they were signing up to serve their country in order to make sure that they could say whatever they wanted.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't want to bang on these kids too much because they're walking down the streets. and they're not thinking
Yeah,
about
right.
stuff. Like, all man on the street stuff is like almost kind of like these people are not prepared. If you ask me anything on the street, there's a 50% chance I'm on a substance, and whatever comes out of my mouth is gonna just
You'll be dumb.
Yeah, no, I'll be brilliant.
Yeah.
I'll be brilliant.
Right.
Much like your acting career.
So this is what's going to be on the rest of the night now.
Yeah. No, you know that you gave me the one line that I'm gonna beat to the ground.
Thank you for your service.
You chose Gutfeld, you're welcome for your freedom.
Yes.
To mock me.
Listen, you chose not to wear leather pants. You did this to yourself.
If you had worn leather pants, I would have been much nicer.
Oh, I'm sure you would have backed
Or the
off.
chaps or something, but
I hate all of them. I hate all of them.
You know, no chaps here.
yeah, no, yeah.
Kat, when you September 11, 2001, you were 36.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you were what are you, 11 or 12?
I was 12.
Right.
Yeah.
So okay, as a 12-year-old, what was that like?
Well, it was, as a 12-year-old, I was at school.
Were you a fat kid?
No. Thank you, though, because that would have been very relevant to my experience of what 9/11 was like for me.
Yes.
And so it was weird because nobody would like tell us what happened. Like nobody would tell us. We were in a school. We didn't have like TVs in the school or anything like that. We didn't have like internet phones or
Are
anything.
you
like
Amish?
that. St. Mary's Catholic School in Mount Clemens.
There you go.
Yeah. And so I had to wait till I got home, and was just watching the TV. And it's the first time I remember, asking my parents about stuff that they didn't really have the answers to, because they were just as shocked and confused as I was.
Right. Yeah. It was when the adults were powerless.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, last word, Tyrus. I'm kind of curious what you were doing 20 years ago, but I want to know what you're thinking now.
Well, I'm thinking that I'm glad he hates you a little more than me. So that's getaway time.
Yes.
I was in Louisville, Texas, with my dear friend Martin Simmons and Elliston, where we were just coming off of arena football, and I had just got signed my first agent. I had a tryout with the Dallas Cowboys, and I was trying to figure out the Cowboys, the Bills, and I had the Toronto deals. I had all these real important things. So we went to the club that night. We partied. Get up in the morning and we see the planes go in the building, and we thought it was a TV show. I kept switching the channel. Still didn't resonate. Like, what just happened? And then for me, although I didn't go into acting then, but it was at that moment that I realized that like my priorities in life are completely because I'm the most important thing in the world right now, and because all I care about is my sports. And seeing what was going on, that's when I started getting into looking into politics and looking into things. Right. So for me, it really caused me to grow up a little more mentally and see what we could do. Yeah. Because we were helping getting supplies down there. We wanted to go down there, but they started stopping people because so many people volunteered to go to New York and dig up stuff, and we were willing to. Guys we're working and training with, we're big, strong guys. Like, hey, we can go help, and we're being stopped, but we found things to send supplies down.
Did you want to say something, Dana?
I was going to say for young people today, the one thing they didn't get to experience on 9/11 that we did was everyone coming together.
Yes.
And that feeling and that ability, and I think that we all kind of miss that. We long for it, and we keep thinking something's going to happen to bring us back to that moment.
Should have been COVID.
It could have been.
Yeah. All right, which we're going to talk about in the next block. Still ahead, the grand finale of my epic Donald Trump interview, and up next, Biden says, can you read that? I don't even know what that says.
Biden says heed his vaccine order, but not if you jump this.
Who puts heed? Who puts heed in a tease?
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year. It's amazing because Discover's accepted at 99% of places in the U.S. that take credit cards. Learn more at discover.com/yes. 2021 Nielsen Report. Limitations apply.
I know this is a little bit late, but our last show was Thursday. But I will say this before we move on. Some of the things that former Vice President Joe Biden said, and my wife said this was surprising because I've always been an optimist when it comes to the United States of America. You can go back to when Obama was president. You can go back to some defeats that Donald Trump ran into, and I always said, look, we have checks and balances. It's going to get better. I've never had the hair on the back of my neck stand up and chills go down my spine as when Joe Biden said, it's not about your freedoms, it's not about your choice, and our patience is wearing thin. This is a really, really scary time. This is unprecedented. And I really hope that we're not looking back at this moment as the moment that the America we knew ceased to be. And I'm not being melodramatic about it. I've never said that on this show before. That speech to me and that mandate was absolutely a line in the sand that has nothing to do with your personal choice to get vaccinated or the science regarding COVID, which is, of course, a serious condition. All right, so let's, before we have Ben Shapiro on the show here, this is something I really wanted to talk about today. So right now, this is what we've been told, is trust the science. And by the way, science is something that changes, at least if you're trusting science, not the science.
Right.
But this is a pandemic entirely of the unvaccinated. And we just had the president basically wage war on anywhere from a quarter to a third of Americans, depending which statistics you use, blaming this pandemic on people who really initially, according to the science, should have no effect on those who are vaccinated. So this is also not true, and it's acknowledged to not be true right now. But let's start with the blame game and the bone-chilling thing. I've never been this scared for our country as when I listened to this speech live from former Vice President Joe Biden.
This is not about freedom or personal choice. My job as president is to protect all Americans. So tonight, I'm announcing that the Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and it's caused by the fact that despite America having unprecedented and successful vaccination program, despite the fact that for almost 5 months, free vaccines have been available in 80,000 different locations, we've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin. And your refusal has cost all of us.
I guess it's a good thing that nobody gives a How about that? My patience is wearing thin. We offered it to you free, but when you didn't take it for free, we're going to force you to do this. This isn't about your freedom or your personal choice. Well, if former Vice President Joe Biden says so. This is, and what is this? The Department of Labor. This, at the same time, the CDC is the one who basically bypassed the courts with the eviction moratorium. The Center for Disease Control is saying, landlords, you're still on the hook for the mortgage, and renters, doesn't matter if you're Michael Keaton in Pacific Heights, you can't be kicked out.
Yeah. Well, he's going around Congress both times.
He's going around Congress both times. I will say this. Look, to people out there, now we have, what, a third of nurses?
Yeah.
A third of nurses who are going to walk on this job right now. That's a labor shortage. That is significant, right? People are getting really upset with the vaccine mandates. And keep in mind that that number is probably not going to change much because a large portion of people who are refusing to get the vaccine are people who've already had COVID, which is not even entered into this equation, former Vice President Joe Biden. It's vaccine. Well, what if I already had it? Well, you still got to get the vaccine anyway. But that's not common practice. That's not the norm here. That's not what the science tells us. But Fauci says we don't really know, so to be on the safe side, get a vaccine even though you already had the virus. Even though we don't necessarily know how your body reacts to that if it's already fought off the virus. Look, this is right now everyone out there. If you are working for a company and you have chosen not to be vaccinated for whatever reason, and this is a choice that everyone can make. I've advocated some people be vaccinated who I think are at risk. Yeah. And I think for some people, they choose not to, and it makes sense for them. Just to be clear, I don't know who is vaccinated and who is not in this office. Let me tell you why. Because it's none of my business. Just like the president has no right to tell companies that they have to force people to be vaccinated. This is over 80 million Americans. If you are in that company and you don't want, and you've chosen not to be vaccinated, don't do it. This is your line in the sand. I'm not saying don't get vaccinated just because you don't. I'm saying if you already chose to, do not allow this pressure to change your decision. This is far beyond the pale. I've never had the hair on the back of my neck stand up as I did with, at least Barack Obama would cover it and talk about what a great nation this is.
Yeah.
You have a guy who said, it's not about your freedom or your choice. The people who just shrieked about a heartbeat bill, which there can be no debate about the fact that the law says you can't stop a heartbeat that's not your own. Evidence shows that it's disingenuous, giving it as many as 1/3. Recent vaccinations are among the vaccinated.
Yet a story of unprecedented results.
Right.
Makes no sense.
It makes absolutely no sense. Does one third of America smallpox? Does 1/3 of America a Doc Holliday? TV right now?
I'm your Huckleberry.
We actually have a perfect example of a case study. And this is something that I found interesting, and hat tip to there was some message boards that talked about this. In June, NBC, and I remember this story, declared a victory for the Blackfeet Nation, the guy on your flight.
Yeah.
The Native American Blackfeet Nation achieved a 90.
Old dark toes.
I wear flip-flops because my ancestors shopped at Packside.
So, Blackfeet Nation, they had achieved a 98% vaccination rate.
Wow.
This is from NBC. The CDC also attributed a 33-fold reduction in COVID-19 incidents in the Blackfeet Nation from October 2019 to November 2020. This is what they said: enforcement of stay-at-home orders and mandated use of face covering in the public with potential fines in jail, fines for being unmasked. So that's great. In other words, this was great. This was 98% vaccination. It was gone, and this was written about everywhere, despite being a small sample size, which, by the way, I will readily admit didn't stop NBC from running on the homepage. Except now, it turns out COVID's back, and they've had to reissue mask mandates after cases have surged.
Weird.
That's so sad to hear.
And actually, our next guest probably knows all about this. We won't bring him on right now, but the data from Israel is also reflecting a pretty damn concerning trend. So, as of August 31st, I want to make sure I'm reading this so I have it absolutely right. All sources are available at loudandproud.com. All the references, you can go and read the entire articles for yourself if you are unemployed or retired. 78% of Israel's eligible population vaccinated. In August, half of the 600 Israeli COVID cases have received 2 shots of the vaccine. Half of them in hospitals, to be clear. Now, people say overall slower. Sure, but then Israel was saying, well, maybe we need to go with the 3rd booster. That might actually need to be policy right away. In June, the UK also reported 26 deaths among 4,087 cases of the fully vaccinated from February to June 2021 versus 34 deaths in 35,000 cases amongst the unvaccinated. As of August 16th, 60% of all gravely ill COVID patients in Israel were fully vaccinated. Now, I just came back from... Now, I'm not saying that when you look at the data, it seems like vaccines seem to reduce the severity of it.
Right.
But that's not why most people out there were vaccinated. This is what matters. The goalposts move. People weren't told, hey, you'll get vaccinated, it'll be a 50-50 shot, but it won't be that bad.
Yeah.
So anyways, but Mayo, they do their... If anyone here wants to say, well, that's flawed, what I'm about to tell you, well, it comes from Mayo. This is a legitimate medical institution.
Yeah.
The best. I've talked about it. If you have something wrong with you and people can't figure it out, go to Mayo. I can't recommend them enough. So, they did a study, and to be clear, the quality of the study, let me read this. Cohorts of vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals from Minnesota, 25,589 each, matched on age, sex, race, history of prior SARS-CoV-2 PCR testing, and date of full vaccination. So they separated 25,000 each, fully vaccinated and not, and they found that the Pfizer vaccine was 42% effective against Delta infection in July. Moderna did a little bit better. That's like a Swiss cheese condom, folks. 42%.
It's 58% not effective.
I'll be clear on that.
Just want to make sure I got
and that's
it right.
today, by the way, right? We've seen Israel's a month or two ahead of us, is what they say. We've seen this kind of reduce over time. We'll see where it bottoms out at, but that's today, or when the study was done. That's not.
Yeah, the Mayo study came from a
now.
little bit, I think about a month ago.
About a month ago, yes.
I wonder why people might be a little hesitant.
So you have a country in Israel. There are a lot of people there. And then you have a study with 25,000 minimum. It's big. It might be 50,000 as far as, actually, if I'm reading this correctly. And that's across a variety of races, genders. I don't even know if they include a non-binary. Maybe that's the wonder of natural. Maybe everyone at the VMAs are immune.
True.
We just didn't know.
It's not anybody. He's the COVID guy shows up and goes, oh.
Or they have a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
I'm willing to bet.
It's just a witch's brew. If you've been vaccinated, you guys can comment below. It's one of the best things you can do for the algorithm. Smash that like button. If you've been vaccinated, what has your experience been like? If you've not been vaccinated, what has your experience been like? And I want to know if you have caught COVID or not, whether you are vaccinated or not. Just list your status and what happened. Because we now have a sample study of 50,000 people in an entire country in Israel. And this matters. Why does this matter? Because it matters how you move forward in a pandemic. It matters the steps that we take going forward if at least one of the vaccines is only 42% effective against the new variant. This matters. It's not anti-science to say, hey, these numbers are alarming and science is changing. What do we do? Don't just change the definition of protection from a vaccination.
Yeah.
We need to figure out the most effective way forward. But we can't, because science has become a religion. And one of the tenets of that religion is this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, despite the fact that many of you got that vaccine and you thought, well, you know what, at least I don't have to worry about the unvaccinated because I can't catch it.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Pfizer's 2032 packaging has been rigorously tested to be tear-resistant, chew-resistant, mischief-resistant, almost adult-resistant since 2013. So your little ones stay safe.
President Biden heading off to California to rally for Governor Newsom, fighting for his political life ahead of tomorrow's recall.
That's right. There you see Marine One headed for Jim Andrews, where he's going to get on the big 747. Here with his final pitch to voters as the recall election wraps up tomorrow, California gubernatorial candidate and Republican frontrunner out west, Larry Elder. Larry, good morning to you.
Morning, how are you?
We're doing okay. So we just saw Joe Biden. He's in Marine One. He's heading your way. Why does Gavin Newsom need him?
Well, the reason Gavin Newsom needs him is because he's done a lousy job as governor. By the way, a lot of people have weighed in. Barack Obama has weighed in. Bernie Sanders has weighed in. Senator Warren has weighed in. And they never say the following magical words. Gavin Newsom has done a good job for the people of California. They can't defend his record on crime. They can't defend his record on homelessness. They can't defend his record on the way he ignored science and shut down this state while his own children were enjoying in-person private education, while he was sitting up there at the French Laundry ignoring the masks and the social distancing mandates that the very people who drafted the mandates were sitting there with him. They can't defend his record on the fact that people are leaving California for the first time in our state's 170-year history. They can't defend his record on fire management. They can't defend his record on the fact that we're having rolling brownouts. They can't defend his record on the fact that we are running out of water because we haven't added to our water infrastructure system in about 40 years. They can't defend his record on anything. So none of these surrogates coming from outside California have uttered the following words. Gavin Newsom has done a good job for the people of California.
Yeah, it would be really hard for anyone to say that. I mean, I lived in California. The degradation of that state under his leadership is really quite apparent. You know, Larry, I'm really curious about, I know you've been working hard, and it looks like, you know, the fact that they're bringing in these big names, they are threatened by you and your candidacy. I'm worried about fraud. You know, when they found that meth addict with 300 ballots in his the trunk of his car, are you hearing any other stories like that, and how worried are you that that might be part of this election?
I am worried about fraud, and we have a election integrity project all set up on my website, electelder.com. I'm worried about the fact that yesterday, the actress accused Harvey Weinstein of rape, says that she received a phone call from Gavin Newsom's wife on behalf of Harvey Weinstein's lawyer 6 months before the story blew up. And Gavin Newsom's wife asked Rose, quote, what can we do to make you happy? What can we do to make this story go away? It is a bombshell. And so far, Washington Post, nothing, CNN, nothing. Can you imagine if that accusation had been made against me because during the campaign I was accused of sexism? I would be talking about this from now until the day I die. But among the mainstream people, nobody seems to give a rip. That is a bombshell accusation that Gavin Newsom's wife called Rose McGowan 6 months before the Harvey Weinstein story blew up on behalf behalf of Harvey Weinstein's lawyer and said, what can we do to make this story go away? And the mainstream media doesn't seem to care. Pourquoi?
Yeah, no, well, yeah, it's shocking too that a woman in a gorilla mask would try to throw an egg at you. Thankfully, she has such a bad arm, so athletic, she missed it. And all and they don't talk about it. They don't put it in the LA Times. I mean, it's unbelievable that that's on a story. Then you get the opinion person say whatever they want to say, but that's news, and it's ridiculous news, but it's news. Real quick.
Right. It is news, and the LA Times referred to me as the blackface of white supremacy. And you're right about this woman that threw an egg at me. She's wearing a gorilla mask. At the tip, I would be tempted to call it not even a mask, but I'd be called sexist if I said that. But maybe she's one of the 20,000 convicted felons that were released early under Gavin Newsom. Maybe she's one of the people that should be behind bars, but for the DA out here in L.A. who was supported by Gavin Newsom, who have not been charging criminals to the fullest extent of the law. Maybe she'd be in jail. But you know, again, if this were a D at the end of my name, they'd be talking about the fact that a white woman in a gorilla mask threw an egg at a Democrat candidate for governor. They've been talking about this in Bangladesh.
Yeah, no, they definitely have a special ire for conservatives who happen to be minority, and you're definitely experiencing that, Larry. Well, we wish you the best of luck in this recall election. It's going to be historic, and we thank you for joining us this morning.
See you in Sacramento.
All right, yeah. See if he's going to shock the world.
While Americans become more dissatisfied with President Biden, his Secretary of State is now getting ready to testify before Congress about the botched Afghanistan exit and the Americans who are still left behind, stranded. They don't like to use that word, but it's true. This after the president defended the withdrawal at a 9/11 memorial that critics are calling insensitive and insulting. Here are some of those comments.
Can Al-Qaeda come back? Yeah, but guess what? It's already back other places. What's the strategy? Every place where Al-Qaeda is, we're going to invade and have troops stay there? Come on.
Felt like he was whispering again. Maybe it was the mask. While Americans are still stranded in Afghanistan, I'll say it again, the president was out golfing, leading critics to go after him for all of that.
We still have NATO allies with people left behind. The promise was, at the very beginning of this, no Americans left behind. It was a blatant lie.
On show.
Well, the Biden administration is the crisis administration. Let's be clear. It is the border, it is crime, it is inflation. Afghanistan was just the straw that broke the camel's back. And quite frankly, it was the first time that the press decided to ask legitimate questions of the commander-in-chief. But let's be clear how we got here. This could have been diverted during the political process on the presidential race, during the presidential campaign. They decided not to ask questions, and the president is just doing simply what he promised to do. Now, we're in crisis because of they didn't ask those questions, but the American people are letting their voices be heard. Now, look, I don't support cursing at the president. I respect the office. But you can't get the commander-in-chief to answer any type of questions. He's not doing town halls. He's not going across the country talking with actual people being impacted by his policies. So what are they supposed to do? Just sit there and take it?
Miranda.
Well, you're right, and obviously people are not sitting there and taking it. They're expressing their displeasure, and although I'm sure all of us here do not condone crude language, it has become a chant that has ripped across the country, first at college games, then you saw at the Yankees-Mets game on September 11, and Joe Biden is heckled wherever he goes, and obviously it has gotten under his skin. That was where he was in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, trying to, in a very inappropriate place, in a very inappropriate day, to justify yet again his botched Afghanistan withdrawal. He's still playing this straw man as if, You know, most people in America wanted to get out of Afghanistan. They just didn't want to do it this way, leaving all our weapons, leaving Americans behind. So he should know that. I think the dawning realization that is so horrifying for a lot of people is that Joe Biden is actually in control of the White House. People are obeying his orders, even though he has a history of terrible judgment, and you know, his cognitive abilities are certainly not what they were, not that they were ever very good anyway. So there are no grown-ups in the administration. It's just we are all in a runaway train, and there's one guy at the wheel, and that is Joe Biden. It's pretty scary.
Well, I know that comments will be made about that. So Miranda, you and I both said it on the air before. We're not doctors on that cognitive point, but what you're talking about is the gaps and everything else, and the world can see that for themselves and make their own judgment. You know, Kaylee, I thought that this was where the president wanted to toggle to the vaccines. We didn't know what he was going to say. We got some embargoed comments like we always do, but we didn't have specificity that sometimes, like former presidents have given us. So when he made his announcement about a vaccine mandate, it was not the kind of toggle, nimble nature, get to this next topic away from Afghanistan that they may have hoped for in the White House press comms office.
Yeah, that's right. Nimble and Joe Biden probably never belong in the same sentence together because he just simply is not that. You're exactly right, though. An adept press shop would say, let's move on to this issue. Let's change the talking points. Let's not pull us back by making those really wrong-headed comments, you know, at Shanksville, as President Biden did. This has just been so wrong. Miranda talked about, you know, the history of bad decision-making on Biden. We've seen this. You know, he sold us on a bill of goods of, you know, I've been here for 47 years. I know how it's done. Well, in reality, we have a group of naive neophytes running the country. That's at least what it feels like. Yes, they've been in government for decades, but their decision-making just confounds you. When you have, look at just the example of the Bergdahl deal, for instance, 2014, 2015. Psaki praised that deal. Blinken, the Secretary of State, said we've mitigated the threat from these terrorists that we're handing overseas.
I'm going to need some evidence now.
Right, we haven't mitigated it. They're running the country of Afghanistan now. Leading, just one last point, the former CIA director for Obama to say, you have inspired jihadists around the world. This is Obama's CIA director who's saying this on the Sunday show.
Well, specifically Al-Qaeda.
Yes,
that's what
specifically Al-Qaeda.
Specifically the possibility that we might be visited again on this soil by that hate.
Exactly.
You know, Emily, what I do find interesting now, though, is the president tries to go forward. He's so mired down by everything that Lawrence was talking about with the crisis here and the crisis there and the crises, plural. I don't see a vice president that he's leaning on. Like, where is she, Kamala Harris?
Such a great point. We know that she's missing in action, absolutely, and we know that between the both of them, every time they open their mouth, they make the situation worse. We also know that when they decide to act, they make the situation worse. And yeah, we see him trying to pivot, trying to divert, holding press conferences on COVID, when the All America is talking about, all we want to know about is the stranded Americans left behind in Afghanistan and the accountability for the 13 service members who died. For someone who campaigned on being ordinary Joe, who identified himself for the last 47 years as being the guy that you can bring home to your parents to talk about what kitchen table matters, impact how they impact, you know, your family. I've never seen someone more detached. For someone who said he was going to be the uniter-in-chief, I've never felt more divided. I've never felt more attacked, that my fellow Americans are attacked. I spent all weekend with veterans of the 20-year war, and I would never dare to speak for them. But it was incredibly disheartening to hear the levels of sentiment and how people feel, how my fellow Americans feel about how this president left them behind, left Americans behind, allies behind, and sullied the honor that America had for so long. And a quick point about the nimbleness. Have you guys ever seen Death Becomes Her? Remember that movie where they come back from the dead?
Meryl Streep.
Yes, literally. I picture him verbally is like when they fall down the stairs and their limbs are falling off and everything is so jerky. Like that's him on a daily basis. Is it so hard to find someone that actually acts like a leader?
Well, you know, Lawrence, I could kind of hear you in the background there. One of the things I was thinking about before we got to the images of Death Becomes Her was, you know, the fact that the president and his administration seem to think that we can't multitask. We are the kings and queens. In fact, let me adjust our crowns. Come on, everybody. We have multitasked for the last 19 months. We're in a pandemic. Like, did you hear the business owner who owns 36 great clips and is down 70 employees before the vaccine mandate? keeping his people safe up until this point, trying to figure out how to make everything work. We are the royalty of multitasking. We the citizens, we the people.
Well, President Empathy is not out there talking with the people. He's not talking with the people that are being impacted by his decisions. This White House has tried very hard to isolate the president. They did it in the middle of the campaign trail where he stayed in the basement for months after month and asking questions. They're doing it right now. And it's as if you just ignore everything that's happening in the world and everything is going to go away. Well, it's not going to go away. And I blame part of this on the media, as I alluded to earlier. You have to ask the tough questions. The American people were robbed of a true choice.
But they also have to answer them.
Well,
like when you have Jen Psaki at the White House and you ask, well, who's going to pay for the mandates and you know, checking cards at the door and all that, she had to think about, well, I don't know, I guess the businesses.
Or what about him saying from the very beginning that there weren't going to be mandates? I mean, that's a lie now. Yeah. That's a lie now. No one's calling him on that.
And Miranda, we weren't going to leave anybody behind. Again, we can multitask. We can talk about all these topics, as Emily was pointing out. You know, we can stay on message better than he can.
Yes, but he doesn't want us to multitask. He wants us just to concentrate on what the White House has decided is the point of the moment. And so he doesn't want us thinking about Afghanistan because it was a disaster. He doesn't want us focusing on the border. He just wants us on, you know, the latest COVID fear campaign.
Hi, Governor Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.
Guest is also a first-time candidate. Football legend Herschel Walker launched a U.S. Senate run in Georgia against Democrat Raphael Warnock, and according to a new Trafalgar Group poll, he is leading the GOP primary field by 70%. He joins me right now. Herschel, it's great to have you. Thanks very much for being with us. So I want to talk about your campaign in a moment, but first, give us your reaction to what you just saw, that incident in California this week and the recall vote coming up Tuesday.
Well, you know, that video is very disgusting. And you know, the people of California, if they feel the governor is not doing his job, they have the right to do a recall. And to have this young woman to do something like that and then assault the security guard and nothing be done. And the left do not say anything about it. You know, it shows the intolerance that they have because that was reversed and that was a Democrat that was being assaulted like that. You just think what would have happened. And I think something needs to be happening. That's one reason I said we got to have law and order for all people, not just one side of the people. We got to have law and order for all people. Otherwise, we have no country here. There's so many things right now that left is being intolerant and all that. That's the reason I decided I wanted to run is because of that.
Well, I mean, look, you know, this video and this incident does not fit with Joe Biden's narrative that we are all systemically racist. Of course, this is a white woman assaulting a black man, so you don't see it on the news, and you don't see it because it doesn't fit in with what Joe Biden has been telling us. Here's an op-ed from James Freeman from the Wall Street Journal. We live in an age of career cancellations over politically incorrect language and perceived microaggressions, and then there's that Larry Elder about whom one is allowed to say almost anything, and even attempt to physically assault without much fear of media condemnation. Herschel, I wonder, do you believe you are going to get a fair shot? I mean, Larry Elder is obviously not getting a fair shot. Will you get one?
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we have to think about. You know, I think one thing that they've done here in Georgia right now, they've passed a couple of laws that I think is going to help me to get a fair shot. But at the same time, we're going to have to keep an eye on everything. I think we got to be vigilant, and the people got to know what's going on. And that's one reason I said I needed to run, because we got to put trust back in our government and our government officials. Right now, the rate of untrust in our government officials is very low. And I know that that's what we have to do. We have to stand for it and give people a right to vote, because that's one of the most privileged things you have. And I'm going to fight right now that I'm going to get a fair election, and I think it's going to happen.
You know, President Trump gave you his, quote, complete and total endorsement. I know he's been encouraging you to run for a long time. Last week he said he gave you complete endorsement, total. What role did he play in convincing you to run? And are you surprised that despite all of these crises in the country right now, from Afghanistan to a wide open border, to now these new mandates that we're all having to follow and rules that Joe Biden is putting in place, he's dropping everything and going to campaign for Gavin Newsom, as is Kamala Harris.
Well, you know, I thank so much the president gave me his total endorsement, because I tell you what, I really want to say thank you, President Trump, for your endorsement. And the people of Georgia know that I needed that endorsement, but they also know that Herschel is going to be running this campaign. Herschel's going to get out, and I'm going to fight for the people. And one of the things I want people to know is this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out and try to bring some integrity back to the state of Georgia, because I represent the people of the state of Georgia, and they're going to see that I will fight for them. You know, I saw I need to say this. You know, I have a Democratic neighbor who came up to me with a letter that they had gotten that was talking about the senator is running against Trump chosen one, and they wanted to raise money. And it's like they couldn't name the name Herschel because they know that I'm a uniter, that I want to bring people together. I'm not out here to separate people the way they have been doing. I'm going to fight for the people, and that's why I'm going to encourage people today to go to teamherschel.com and help me fight for you, because that's what we got to do together as people, is to bring people back together.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned how much support you have. Today is the 40th, this weekend rather, the 40th anniversary of the 1980 National Championship for the University of Georgia. An important weekend, of course, for Georgians, and we love looking at this video of you at the University of Georgia. You've got a lot of support throughout Georgia. As we look at that, tell us what your priorities are right now. What is the main platform that you're running on, and what do you want to change once you get that seat in the Senate?
Well, you know, first of all, I think the main platform is to bring some integrity, to bring some honesty back to this country, to the state of Georgia, because, you know, I believe in those goals that should be goals that everyone believes in, that everyone should have law and order for all people, not just for certain people, but for all people. I believe in supporting our military, which is what we should do. I believe in border control. You know, we got to have border control. You know, those are the things that we should all be believing in, not just a certain group or anyone like that. And I believe in school choice. I think everyone should have school choice, education for our kids. And those are common things that everyone should be believing in. But it seems like the left doesn't believe in that. They believe in separation. And that's something that I do not believe in. I don't believe in separation. I think the reason this country is the greatest country in the world is they brought so many great minds together and put them together. And you don't have just two classes like you have in a lot of other countries, the rich and the poor. In this country, we have people that have the freedom to go out and work and make the American dream come true. And that's what I believe in. It's helping people to get that done.
Yeah. Real quick before you go, Herschel, we've talked with your son a lot, Christian Walker. He is a political commentator. I love following him on Instagram. Will he be part of your campaign? Will he be also campaigning for you, Herschel?
Well, you know, he's always going to be campaigning for me because, you know, Christian, I love him to death. You know, he has his way of saying things, and sometimes we may disagree with the way he says it, but I believe in everything that he said. He just says it a little bit more tougher than I do. But he's a smart young man, and he, you know, he's in college. He's still trying to finish his degree up, which he's finishing early, with a couple of degrees. So he will join in later and help me out because I love the little guy. And I better not say little guy because he ain't gonna like me to say that.
You're right. We will take a short break. Herschel, it's great to talk with you this morning. Thanks very much.
Did you know it's possible to recover millions in compensation for stroke misdiagnosis? Call Latona Law for a free malpractice consultation. 570-825-9000 or visit latonalaw.com.
Okay.
Yes, it does require voter ID. The American people want that.
Oh my God, not the civil liability. I gotta make sure.
Democratic friends from Texas, if you don't, If you don't see the need for that, then there are one or two circumstances here. Either you're so dumb you lose your place during sex, or you want to cheat.
When I lose my place during sex, I just refresh the browser window. I was just kidding, okay? So while crime spreads like a virus on a plane full of Democrats, at least we know true justice is being done. A Florida man has been sentenced to 8 months in jail for breaching the Senate chamber on January 6th, carrying a Trump flag. The only surprise, he didn't get life without parole. Now, we're not liberals, so we get it. You do the crime, you do the time. We got that from Beretta. For anybody watching who's younger than 75, Beretta. He had a parrot. No, doesn't ring a bell. But you can still question the penalty. And you know, if you were BLM, you would be A-OK. But it's obvious that they overdid the sentencing. In fact, they even admit it. As one assistant U.S. attorney said, it will send a loud and clear message, so there won't be a next time. But you gotta worry when you become a message, because then you're screwed. It's a threat, like finding a horse's head in your bed, or a book signed by Andrew Cuomo. Sentencing should only be for the crime and not for a greater message, especially a message so manufactured. You heard it yourself. The breach was the worst thing since the Hindenburg, the JFK assassination, and synchronized swimming all rolled into one.
I believe that January 6th was, in effect, a second kind of civil war.
The worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
The worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
The most serious threat to our democracy since the Civil War.
The worst assault on the Capitol since the Civil War.
January 6th was worse than 9/11 because it's continued to rip our country apart.
The assault on free and fair elections is just such a threat. Literally. We're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War.
Wow. It's like they're all working from the same script. Talk about sending a message. And man, they are on message. The media, the Democrats, and even the judges. But why send a message about this and not other things that are killing people? And I'm not talking about climate change or misgendering your friend Danny. Hundreds of people arrested in riots last year have all had their charges dismissed. These include people who threw projectiles at cops and burned private property, assaulted civilians, and of course there was the looting and the destruction of businesses. In Minneapolis alone, you have over $500 million in damages. 1,500 properties damaged, 150 buildings set on fire, countless police injured. Maybe it's hard to prosecute mobs and masks, but imagine if the government had devoted the time and resources to punish these thugs with the same intensity they devoted to hunting down trespassing grannies who didn't wear masks. Stores could be open again in minority neighborhoods. Parked cars wouldn't get air conditioned by broken windows. We could get MS-13 down to MS-5 or 6. But they didn't. Instead, they egged on the civilians to narc on each other. They turned America into a nation of mafia rats because they hate anything that smells of Trump. And so, ignoring the helpless cries of citizens, our government created an artificial danger to keep us divided. That America is now at the mercy of a white supremacist movement. Crime wave that's paralyzing cities across the country. Yet we know which one is real and which one isn't. Even the judge who sentenced the Capitol Hill guy used the same exact words from the media. Judge Randolph Moss told the guy, although you were only one member of a larger mob, you actively participated in a larger event that threatened the Capitol and democracy itself. Now you can say that about the crime wave, but they won't. But that sentiment about January 6th had already been put into play over and over by the media, that this day threatened democracy. Of course, the Capitol reopened, and our dear leaders were back to pretending to work within hours. Meanwhile, countless businesses will never come back since the crime wave began. There are the dead who paid the price for the cowardice of liberal leaders. Remember David Dorn? You should, because the media won't. But good for you, Judge. You got some misguided nutter tossed into the clink. You saved democracy. Not really, you just parroted the media's message, which is, who cares about criminal gangs? We got the dumb white protester covered. Here are some San Francisco locals describing what it's like to run a business now overrun by looters.
They're literally just taking it from the store. They're taking it, grabbing it, and running. The auto is now boarded up because someone broke into our store one night.
I'm going to come and grab anything that we can get.
They casually come in, grab what they need, and walk out. I ran up to stop them, and they kind of threatened everyone here, and then they took what they wanted to and left.
This has been going on for a year and a half now. It's really bad.
Really bad. But I bet they're all really relieved they sentenced the guy from January 6th. All of those thieves must have been flaky Trump supporters. But AOC will tell you those criminals are only stealing bread to feed their families as they funnel the goods through an elaborate fencing network, making millions for syndicates. Man, has she gone quiet on that? So the government has made a choice. It's not based on justice, but fear. Terrified of the elite activist class, they decided to let the mob steal while locking up crackpots and funny hats. The guy didn't hurt anyone or damage property. What's he going to tell a cellmate that he's in for? Loitering? So he's political collateral damage, a Trump supporter, what the media sees as subhuman, no recipient of mercy. The security of a country is now less important than sheer political revenge. They want you crushed like the wheels on Brian Stelter's desk chair. Damn. I know. All right. I wonder what the angry white male has to say.
Sure is great taking a walk and being at peace with my thoughts. You know, it's so strange that those same politicians who pushed for lockdowns and then encouraged those violent protests that led to the destruction of cities now want to decriminalize shoplifting and property crimes, which will just further hurt America's small businesses. I mean, I just can't think of any reason for it at all. Don't say Great Reset, it'll make you seem crazy.
Don't say Great Reset, it'll make you seem crazy. Did I just say something?
He is crazy, but I wonder what the angry black male has to say.
What it is, what it was, what it shall be. This is Tyrus. Enough said. What? Yes. What happened January 6th? Everyone involved that was arrested and was seen on video is being given some stiff sentences, as they should. It was a bad thing. I don't believe in whataboutism, and I'm not taking one from the other, but I will say this. Everyone that broke into a building, burned down a building, stole a bottle of water, up to hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages to stores and buildings, should also be given the same stiff penalties. Just putting out there, fair is fair. Law is the law. Leave politics out of it. That's it.
So one last quiz. What is a true threat to democracy? Citizens breaching the Capitol? Maybe. Or a government enlisting private companies to curb your freedom of speech while turning your neighbors and relatives into a bunch of squealers? Or how about that same government pretending a crime wave is merely a distraction from unseen and unnamed white terrorists? I think you already know that answer. The problem is, it doesn't matter. Oh, here he is. Welcome tonight's guest. She's done more interviews than a hiring manager at Wendy's. Fox Business correspondent Susan Lee. He's our #1 source for names starting with J. Retired U.S. Marine Corps bomb technician at Fox News Computer, Johnny Joey Jones, 3 J's. Cheerleader, lawyer, pundit. She's worn more hats than fans at the Kentucky Derby. Outnumbered co-host Emily Capano. And his animal tattoos are life-size. My massive sidekick and host of that set of Fox Nation, Iris. Susan, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to see you.
Oh, good to see you.
You're up too early in the morning, so I don't see you then. What, you're at Fox Business. what kind of message is it when no one gets arrested or charged for looting?
Well, we're kind of used to double standards in Washington. Remember when that story broke that Nancy Pelosi is worth $150 million, and that's because she's been buying stock, her husband has been buying stock that has been affected by policy that she makes. And now, if that happened on Wall Street, people would be thrown away, be put in jail, probably for the rest of their lives for white corporate crime. But in D.C., you know, it seems like a double standard for others, right? Members of Congress, you can go in and buy stock whenever you feel like.
Right. So you have a double standard here then, in which, obviously January 6th, these people go to jail, but a slow-rolling crime wave, you can get away with anything. You could go in and shoplift.
Right. Well, my grandpa used to own a convenience store. So he was running away from Civil War, and that was how he made his new life here in the new land. And when I was little, I didn't know it at the time, but he was being robbed.
Right.
I was a little kid, I didn't know what was happening. He told me to go back into the kitchen and
I remember that
stay
day.
there. You were there.
Yes.
So my grandpa was still trying to make a new life, right? He's trying to build a business, and when things are stolen, he loses money. It hurts him in the end.
Exactly.
Because the individuals are just trying to make a living that gets hurt by shoplifting and crime.
Then they leave, they close up the businesses, they leave, and those businesses aren't there, and the towns or the communities slowly die, Emily. They slowly die. You actually, we were a cheerleader for the Raiders, so you're used to defending criminals.
Everyone is innocent.
Except for the Raiders. So anyway, you are a lawyer, and why do you think there's this double standard?
I don't know, but it kills me too, just as a human. I feel like you don't even have to be an attorney to see the injustice here. And I think what's hard for me to swallow as well as a criminal defense attorney is the fact that the prosecutors are failing to do their job. The system exists in a certain way so that it protects both sides. So that, yes, the defendants are protected, but so are the victims. There are advocates and representatives of everyone in the system in the court. But here what we're seeing is a complete erosion of that duty on the prosecutorial side. So you talk about the slow dying. I mean, we watched before our eyes Portland burned to the ground essentially over 100 straight days of riots and looting and fires. And of all of the federal crimes that were referred for prosecutions, the DA dropped half of them. And of those half, none went to trial. And instead, the ones that got any type of sentence, it was literally doing community service or, quote, encouraging people to vote. Those were for crimes like assaulting a federal officer, burning down the federal building to the tune of $3 million. But, earlier you mentioned revenge in your intro. And in those riots, I will never forget, one of those rioters' signs said, "We don't want Biden, we want revenge."
Right.
Exactly.
What's up, Jake Hughes? How are you? Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. How about that? I turned old enough to run for president today.
Excellent.
Yep, but I'm not going to do it unless Tammy Duckworth does.
Oh.
That way no one can say I used my legs to win and she doesn't get to.
Okay, I have to do this every time he's on. He likes joking around. You can laugh.
That was not a joke.
Like,
That was not a joke.
no one here thought it was funny that he crossed his leg and then uncrossed it and then sighed relief. No one saw that. I thought it was funny. Sorry. Just putting it out there.
I'm gonna throw out a conspiracy theory that I came up with, so it's probably true. How is it possible that all the protests and riots suddenly just went away and nothing was solved?
Well,
you know what I mean? Well, we got it was almost like it was a faucet that was turned on and then turned off.
I mean, the virus, there's a lot of things that get exacerbated and go away, and then maybe come back when it's politically advantageous. Here's a really good one, the war in Afghanistan. We didn't fight a 20-year war, we fought 10 two-year wars because we had midterms, presidential elections, right? But just on this topic, you said earlier, you're like, hey, why does this double standard exist? Well, it's obvious why it exists. It's a political intimidation. That's exactly what it is. You cannot create an argument to me that white dome just model. I can't remember.
Lego model, the Capitol building.
Had a mausoleum to corruption.
Ah, there you go.
I would have got.
So
So you cannot tell me that is more of a symbol of democracy than every town square across the country.
Amen.
And that's what bothers me so much. But here's the difference: the people that exist in those quiet town squares are just the people that go about their lives. They are rule followers, so they're easy to punish.
Ah.
But when people aren't rule followers, they're not easy to punish, and that's the problem. The problem is that the message was clear. You can come for them, but don't come for us. Don't come to Capitol Hill. Go to small towns. We don't care about that, but don't come for us. Don't come for the ruling class.
That really pisses me off the way you frame it. I mean, it's true.
Which is real as it gets.
Yeah, it pisses the hell out of me because I know that JJJ, Triple J, is right. You know what I'm saying, Tyler. So, like you said it, you made a really good point as the angry black male. That consistency is what matters.
Yes, but we're in the midst of a con, and it's piggybacking on what he's saying. Here's the thing, we're playing the same game, we've just changed the rules. Now you have people coming out, and unfortunately most of the time they're people of color who have been elected by masses of different colors, saying that things are as bad as they ever were. You can't prove it, we can't deny it. If we challenge it, we're part of the problem. Right. So then you can go ahead and influence people who just want something to burn down. And you're not concerned with what the reactions of it is, and the more that they do it, the more things you can say. And then at some point, when the jig is up and you've got enough money, because everyone who's speaking about the injustices of this country is making a lot of money on speaker fees and donations to the cause, and the millions, and eventually be trillions, to make all this money to solve a riddle that they already know the answer to. They're just taking the playbook from the time when things were really bad, when it was Jim Crow era, when there was a huge difference when if a brother walked into the store and he stole a piece of bread to feed his family, he'd get 20 years, no parole. Now, when a white person does it, walks into the thing, does the same thing, he would have got he needed food. He needed it for his family. So I support him for having the courage to go in there and take what's his for his family. We just changed the roles now. Now it's white America that's the problem, because they didn't want equality, they want opportunity and advantage, and you have opportunity and advantage, you can profit from it. And as long as it doesn't happen in their yard, where everyone gets crazy sentences, they can eat themselves, and then you can profit from it. And that's what we're seeing in this country. It's just we have just switched roles. Flip the script. And white people, unfortunately, have been conditioned not to fight back. And you guys need to fight back. And I just end with this. I'm so sorry that your grandfather left the Civil War, came all the way to America, lo and behold, to find out it's worse than a Civil War.
Yes.
So, sorry.
Such a good point. Yeah.
I mean, that's the woke thing.
Yeah.
Where you at?
It's worse things.
It's the worst thing. He got here. This is worse than when I left. Damn it. Sorry. I'm sorry that you guys had to deal with it.
All right, up next, they said screw the civilians while their private security costs millions.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Your medicine helps you live your life, but Democrats want new taxes on prescription drugs. This means fewer new drugs and cures will be developed. Tell Washington, don't tax our health care.
Want to hear a funny opinion? That Don Lemon doesn't do opinion.
I don't do opinion. And I know that the difference for me is I do point of view. So I'm giving my point of view as an American, as a black man who happens to be gay. But I'm through that lens. But I also represent CNN. And so I must tell the truth. And if I don't, if my facts are wrong, then I have to clarify it, and I have to come on television, and I have to apologize, and I say, I got that wrong.
That has never happened. So he's telling you what he bases his opinions off of. At the same time, he tells you he doesn't give opinions, just point of view. Look up what point of view means. It means opinion. But let's be honest, CNN's facts are much like their opinions, and that they aren't facts. And serious, Don Lemon doesn't do opinions. Yeah, the Olive Garden doesn't do breadsticks. And riots are peaceful, and crime isn't exploding, and Cat Timp isn't hammered off coffee toner right now. It's true. You know what they say about opinions. Opinions are like a-holes. Everyone has one. And you know what they say about a-holes with opinions? They probably work at CNN. Imagine taking anything that Lemon says as fact. I think CNN once did a commercial on that.
This is an apple. Some people might try to tell you that it's a banana. They might scream banana, banana, banana over and over and over again. They might put banana in all caps. You might even start to believe that this is a banana.
Oh. Much like Brian Stelter's hairline, that has not aged well. And neither has Lemon's so-called facts, otherwise known as unhinged babble puke.
You are the commander-in-chief, the President of the United States of America, the greatest country on earth. Act like it.
The President of the United States is a fraud and a con man. The President of the United States is racist. A lot of us already knew that. If you voted for Trump, you voted for the person who the Klan supported. You voted for the person who Nazis support. They like the racism. They like the misogyny. They like all of it, because if they didn't, they wouldn't support it.
Yeah, Democratic cities are in chaos right now. Is this what you want from Joe Biden? And they're going to take your country away, and they're taking down the statues. And
Crime is rising.
Crime is rising.
Defund police.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. And they are defunding police. It's like,
Biden just did a presser on the crime wave, buddy. If you brought this guy within a mile of a lie detector, it would explode. I haven't seen that many bad opinions since the initial reviews of this hit show. Whatever happened to those people? So why is he so defensive about expressing opinions? It seems like a central part of his identity, his emotional assessment of stuff. Why can't he say, "Hi, I'm Don Lemon, and I have more opinions than a meth-addled cab driver"? Instead, we have to laugh at his nightly denials. After me, he's the funniest late-night show host on TV. Perhaps it's a defensive response to our accurate criticism of CNN. And we're only trying to help them. A strong CNN makes for a stronger Fox News. Competition builds character. It's why my debate coach would make me wrestle him for pencils. They were always in his front pocket. So with a weak adversary like CNN, it's harder to build your own muscles. It's like the gym, you need heavy weights to build strength, and CNN is like those stretch bands old ladies use in arthritis commercials. And like those bands, you can only stretch the truth so far before it breaks. But at this point, it's almost unfair to comment on CNN. It's like bad-mouthing the deceased at a funeral. But they deserve it. They refuse to admit they're agenda-driven, and the agenda is to stoke anger between citizens in order to keep eyeballs glued to their misery fest. The fact that their ratings are lower than a snake's nuts should be good news for all of us. Still, they must maintain the belief that they speak the truth because everything else they do is built on it. Snakes do have nuts. If you lie all the time and then you tell the truth, half of the CNN viewers will suddenly figure out that you were lying to them before. So they turn you off and boom, there goes half their audience, which is roughly the size of the Hexen family. Last week, I pointed out the difference between us and the Decepticons at CNN. We make it clear who's giving an opinion and who's reporting a story. Take me and Bill Hemmer to Aruba. He's a news guy who delivers the product straighter than Perino's teeth. I'm an opinion guy who looks great in a pastel Speedo. Follow me on Instagram. How does Don Lemon see this obvious fact?
So that is the difference between what I'm doing and what someone, as you mentioned, over at Fox News is doing. I'm operating from a place of truth. It's all based in fact, and it's all based on the evidence that's out there.
Yeah, the keyword's out there. It's a dodge. He can lie because the lie comes from the truth that's out there. And it's that defense that has allowed CNN to push destructive bile about law enforcement, about the decimation of our cities due to the left-wing policies CNN parades as progress. But imagine if CNN hadn't embraced the police's racist theme and had looked up the data. If I could do it, so could Lemon, but he didn't, because if he did, Zucker would can him quicker than cling peaches. Imagine if they hadn't portrayed half of America as white supremacists. I mean, there are black and brown Trump supporters, but they didn't count, at least for Lemon. Imagine if they saw how much divisive opinions created a climate that pit people against each other, culminating in billions in damages and rioting. Oh, how they laughed at that crime. You saw that. If only they hadn't waited until it finally affected Biden's election chances that they took the bloodshed seriously. The divisive climate caused a palpable subversion of law enforcement, leading to reductions in police interaction in communities that needed their help most. The results, a massive spike in shootings and murder, the death of innocent minorities in cities left to rot by the left, who took their cues from CNN. But I guess that's just an opinion, right? But it's an opinion arising from truth, from facts. I mean, if Lemon can say that, so can I. But at least I'm honest enough to say that it's my opinion. Time for Lemon to do the same. Welcome tonight's guest. Her biceps are registered with CrossFit and the NRA. Fox News contributor Laura Trump. He was awarded the Bronze Star, and that's also his nickname at the tanning salon. Fox and Friends weekend co-host Pete Hegseth. She's louder than a garbage disposal full of angry ghosts. Fox News contributor Kat Tiff. If he hollers cannonball, there's about to be a tsunami. My massive sidekick and host of Upset on Fox Nation, Iris. So, Laura, that's the first time I've been on your Instagram. You work out like a demon.
Well, thank you very much.
I know.
Congratulations for checking me out.
I know. I think I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how to do my tries better. So I always feel like that the legacy media is based on an adolescent idea, almost like from a freshman in high school, that they know the truth and no one else does, and then that means that they can read everybody else's mind. That's where CNN. That's why CNN can demonize everyone.
Yeah. Well, it's very clear. Maybe they don't call it opinion. Maybe it's because it is obviously like left-wing propaganda that they continue to push out there. It's very clear to anyone that's been paying attention that the mainstream media, and CNN is definitely part of that, is like the marketing arm for the Democrat Party. They continue to push the narrative that the Democrats want them to put out there. And it's pretty clear when you walk down the street, you can see the people that have bought into the propaganda and see the people who are free thinkers, who are critical thinkers, who have clearly not bought into it. And by the way, I think they are playing their hand a little too far each and every day. And I think people are starting to wake up and say, something isn't right, because after all, we see all the things that they were continuing to be wrong about come out every single day.
Yeah, and the thing is, Pete, he said, like, when I'm wrong, I'll admit it. He never admitted he was wrong about anything, especially the riots that he mocked, the violence and the black on black crime. He mocked it. He never came back and said, boy, I really screwed up. Instead, he said that it's affecting Biden's chances in the election, which, you know, as we know, some election, right, Pete?
Yeah. Really spot on. Let's do that again. 24.
Yeah.
It's because his entire premise is based on the fact that he's smart and you're dumb. And as a result, if he admits that he's wrong, he's got to admit that he's not as smart as he says, and he doesn't get to tell you his point of view that isn't opinion. By the way, he went from CNN to PBS so that he could go the only place lower rated than CNN.
Yeah.
To do this interview.
Hosted by, and that was Margaret Hoover, who is married to John Avlon, who is one of the loudest, most obnoxious hacks on streets.
Oh, and probably on Twitter, that is. Yes. But the whole thing is, ultimately, don't lie to me. That's all I want on TV. Greg Gutfeld will come up and say, this is my point of view. This is my opinion. This is what I... When you stand up and say, no, I'm objective, just the facts, just the science, just the truth, and you can see right through it. That's why people turn the channel. People would rather watch MSNBC, where they're saying, I've got a point of view, I'm going to tell you what it is, judge for yourself. Same thing with Fox.
That's why Rachel Maddow is a pro, and I may disagree with everything, but she's not a phony. It's like these weird levels of awareness where CNN is at this weird thing where they believe that they know the truth. As you get older, you're supposed to get wisdom where you know that truth isn't, that's not how it works. It's like, you can look at CNN, and you can look at Fox News, and you can look at MSNBC, and see what they're doing. You can be above it.
I'm above it naturally, Greg.
Yes.
I know being above things is new for you, and by the way, only you could see if a snake had nuts. That's awesome. Thank you for that. let's not be so quick.
Yes.
To I mean, hey, hold on here. I mean, if you can say point of view and opinion, I mean,
Yes.
I'm like, I don't murder, I take life. So, I mean, you know, you can just kind of split, you know, just let's not be so, it's always safe. But what he's basically saying is, I'm not wrong, and if I am, it's from my point of view because I'm coming from a place of truth, which means that I can't be held accountable for anything I say.
Yes.
So, if you give an opinion, you have to own it.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes courage to give an opinion. To sit up here and especially your stature and those socks, for you to say the things that you want to say. Listen, I gotta do something, you know, because she's gonna snap, and I'm not gonna stop her.
About my socks?
No, every week you keep throwing little jabs at Kat, and I'm telling you, it's building. It's building. And when she gives you her point of view,
Yeah.
you're gonna want to hear my opinion.
All right, Kat.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a Don Lemon fan?
No.
Are you do you notice that their entire, like, I guess their entire premise is based on knowing what you think? Like, if you say, Kat, to CNN, I'm not racist, they would disagree. They go, but I know you.
I think if anybody knew what I was thinking ever, I would not be allowed in society. But I just think it's so interesting that anybody would ever trust any human and say, yes, what they're saying is complete fact. Because a lot of us aren't perfect.
Exactly.
And sometimes people, I mean, like, someone can tell you one thing, and then, you know, you spend some time hiding in their bushes, and you see something completely different. You can't completely, it just doesn't even fancy yourself as, he's remarkably bad at it, and he doesn't even try. Everything's an opinion. Everything is, you know, clearly, his bias is very, 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 very straightforward when it comes to that. But to even think that he would be capable of that is a creepy level of narcissism.
Yeah, I mean, I always use myself, my example of, like, my shift on Donald Trump was pretty drastic, and it was because of my cognitive biases. I'm aware of I'm aware of how we manufacture our own truth. We manufacture our own truth every day, and then we come to believe it, and then we say, but it's the truth. We forget that we actually have manufactured
Right,
it.
like how I used to drink before work, and now that I know I can get high off coffee toner, I'm going to save a lot of money.
Save some for the rest of us. All right, up next, Hollywood swarms to promote.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
For unique tub-over-tub installation in just a day, Bathfitter doesn't just fit your bath, it fits your busy schedule. Why have over 2 million people welcomed Bathfitter into their homes? It just fits. Bathfitter. Call now or visit bathfitter.com to book your free consultation.
Welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Quite a day in financial markets, not a phrase we use a lot on this show, but a lot happened today, and there are massive implications for all of us. Dave Portman joins us in a moment to explain what those are. But first, some context for what we're watching right now. Last March, as the country began to panic about the arrival of a strange new coronavirus from China, a billionaire called Bill Ackman went on television in an attempt to make America even more afraid than it already was. Our economy may be done at this point, he said. Over, dead, not coming back. Bill Ackman went on like this for 28 full minutes. Terrified CNBC viewers watched slack-jawed as he ranted. Here's part of his performance.
Hell is coming. This was a feeling like I've never had. Like there's a tsunami coming, right? The tsunami's coming and you feel it in the air, right? The tide starts to roll out, okay? And on the beach, people are playing and having fun like there's nothing going on. And that is the feeling I've had for the last 2 months, okay? And my colleagues at work, okay, thought I was a lunatic. We need to shut it down now. America will end as we know it, okay? I'm sorry to say so, okay? Unless we take this option.
Bill Ackman was afraid, and he wanted you to be afraid. Ackman was especially frightened for the future of Hilton Hotel. Hilton Hotels, Ackman proclaimed, quote, is going to zero, along with every other hotel company in the world. Every hotel is going to be shut down in the country. Every one. Talk about scary. But in the end, not for Bill Ackman. Not long after that appearance, we learned that Ackman's firm had made more than $2 billion from trading in the stocks that many people believe he had pushed down with the hysterically dire predictions you just saw, including Hilton Hotel. So was Ackman's rant on CNBC part of a very dishonest investment strategy? It seemed pretty obvious, so we said so on the air. Ackman's lawyers immediately threatened to sue us. In a long phone conversation later, Ackman swore to us that his public attack on Hilton Hotels had nothing at all to do with his desire to buy hotel stocks at a lower price or with the billions in profit that his firm subsequently reported. There was no connection whatsoever. He promised, and he sounded emotional when he said it. We'll let you assess Bill Ackman's sincerity. We do know that this kind of behavior is common on Wall Street. Ackman himself once attacked the company Herbalife on television. It's going to zero, he once again predicted, in an effort to profit from Herbalife's decline. Pretty ugly. But that kind of thing happens a lot on Wall Street. Hedge fund managers bet money that a specific stock will decline in value. That's called short selling. Short selling has no obvious value to the American economy. Short selling exists for the purpose of enriching the people who do it. Short selling hurts companies, obviously. It hurts their investors, hurts their employees. Ultimately, it hurts our country itself. Yet it continues. No one does anything about short selling. Regulators ignore it. CNBC applauds the brilliance of the people who...
Your medicine helps you live your life, but Democrats want new taxes on prescription drugs. This means fewer new drugs and cures will be developed. Tell Washington, don't tax our health care.
Do it. They're so clever, those hedge fund managers. In fact, NBC's Business Channel regularly lends its airwaves to unscrupulous short sellers who use free TV airtime, you may have seen this, to tank American companies for profit. They do that all the time. The last administration did nothing to stop this. The current administration certainly won't. The Biden White House is more tightly controlled by business interests than any administration in history. Virtually every person there is beholden to the finance establishment. What's happening on Wall Street is so clearly awful and so obviously destructive. The question is, who's going to fight back against it? As it turns out, a bunch of guys on Reddit will. It fell to them to push back against the short sellers because no one else even tried. So they did. A group of independent investors in a Reddit group called Wall Street Bets learned that hedge funds plan to short the stock of a fading retail company called GameStop. So the Reddit investors began buying shares of GameStop. And GameStop surged in value, ultimately up by more than 1,000%. The hedge funds, for all their calculations, hadn't seen that coming, and they lost billions as a result of it. One hedge fund lost so much money it needed a bailout from two other hedge funds. Meanwhile, some of the investors on Reddit got rich. But getting rich was not the whole reason to do it. They also wanted to send a message to the hedge fund manager. Here's one of the Reddit guys, a man called Justin Speed. Explain it.
And to say there wasn't some pleasure out of the fact, I'm a pastor and Jesus tells a story about this rich fool who has an overabundant harvest that's more than he can store. And rather than give the excess to those in need, he chooses to build bigger and bigger barns to store it for himself. And rather than share the billions with the less fortunate, they've built bigger and bigger barns for themselves. And so, yeah, as 100%, there is a part of me that thought, well, it will be fun to be a part of this moment, to see this moment where at some level, overnight, these investors are losing their investing lives. It's being demanded from them. And they're left wondering what they get, who's going to get what they had prepared for themselves.
They built bigger barns for themselves. Well, that's true. Not to mention epically enormous art collections. The hedge fund people, in case you haven't noticed, in case you don't read the business press, are very proud of their art collections. Very aggressively, flamboyantly proud. Despite the fact that a lot of their so-called art is ugly, overpriced garbage, cheap, garish crap that people will laugh at a generation from now. And that tells you a lot. It turns out that a lot of our financial wizards have awful taste. They're as vulgar as the way they do business. They don't know that, though, because no one dares tell them in a country that worships finance people. They're the kind of rich people who still think Frank Gehry is a brilliant architect, not a scam artist. So people like that, arrogant, lacking any self-awareness whatsoever, understandably generate some resentment from the rest of the population. They pause and say, wait a second, Bill Ackman, and the many people on Wall Street who behaved like Bill Ackman. What exactly did you do to make $2 billion? Did you improve anything? Or was it just another sleazy inside deal that the rest of us were excluded from participating in? Tell us now. Please speak slowly so we can understand your answer. That was pretty much the message the Reddit guys were sending to Wall Street. Watching at home, a lot of Americans applauded that message. They feel the same way. But the hedge fund people don't. They weren't happy. People who lose money rarely are happy. But here's what makes the hedge fund managers different from you. They have a lot more power than you. They control the game, so they immediately change the rules of the game. Today, the investment app Robinhood, which is used by independent investors to buy and sell stock, banned its users from trading GameStop shares, as well as from several other company shares. No one even knew that was legal. Maybe it isn't, but Robinhood did it anyway, and they did it under pressure from the hedge funds, who they really work for. So much for the free market you're always hearing about. There's nothing free about it. That turned out to be a lie. Turns out that what Wall Street really hates is outsider trading. The idea that people from outside their world might be getting rich. That's the one sin they can't abide. The management of Robinhood, of course, didn't admit any of this. They can't. They're still posing instead as an outpost of inclusive progressive values in a sea of rapacious capitalism. The irony being, of course, Robinhood is the most rapacious. They sell information they gather from their customers to the hedge funds who use it for their advantage, and most customers don't even know. How's that for progressive? On the other hand, they do support BLM. They're against hate and systemic racism. They're for science, and they want you to know that. Here's an ad from Robinhood that ran just last month.
Remember when greed was good? When you had to look the part? When you had to pay for a seat at the table? We set out to change it, the way the system works, to put the power in everyone's hands, to make it feel, speak, sound, and look just like you. We all invest every day in ourselves, our communities, our future. We are all investors.
It's so fun to watch that stuff after the fact. That ran a month ago. We set out to change the way the system works, says Robinhood. Well, that's for sure. In fact, that's literally true. Robinhood changed the system at precisely the moment when people from outside the system started benefiting from the system. Sorry, proles, no trading for you or locking your account. Other platforms took effectively the same position, but felt the need to pretend a little more. Justified changing the rules by attacking the very people they were hurting by changing the rules. The communication service Discord, for example, banned users from the Wall Street Bets group from using its platform. Why'd they do that? It wasn't all because the Reddit guys were beating the hedge fund guys at their own grubby game, and that's not allowed. No, it had nothing to do with that, of course. No, instead, they were banned, according to Discord, because the Reddit guys had engaged in, quote, hate speech. Of course, the Reddit guys were racists. That's why they humiliated the hedge funds. Only a racist would do that. You can laugh if you want, but keep in mind, this is a time-tested tactic. It works. That's why they do it. Remember back, if you can, to the Occupy Wall Street protests of more than a decade ago. The 2008 crash wrecked an awful lot of families in this country. Many have not recovered even now. People were angry about that, and many blamed Wall Street, and they said so. But rather than address their grievances, some of them legitimate, Wall Street and its countless puppets in the media just changed the subject. So it was right about this point that we started hearing an awful lot about identity politics. We can prove that. In 2011, when the Occupy movement was at its peak, mentions of the word racism in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Los Angeles Times skyrocketed. In the case of the Washington Post, which is America's most committed defender of entrenched power, literally owned now by the richest man in the world, mentions of racism nearly tripled at the height of Occupy Wall Street. Oh, and of course it worked. They changed the subject. They're doing that again. They always do that. Always. Over on CNBC, home of the professional short seller, the ones who tell you to sell when they profit from it, they haven't started yet yelling about the scourge of white supremacy on Reddit, though obviously that's coming. It's inevitable. But they started their defense of big finance a little more tactfully than that. The problem with humiliating hedge funds, explained anchor and professional hedge fund shill Andrew Ross Sorkin, is that in the end, humiliating hedge funds only hurts the people who do it. So for their own good, they might want to stop this nonsense immediately.
What I'm concerned about is that this is a pump and dump scheme that effectively is being cloaked, as Mother Teresa has arrived on the scene. I think there are real underlying issues with the system that need to be resolved. I do not want to protect the system. I love watching the little guy beat the big guy as much as anybody, but what I wonder is whether these folks trying to quote-unquote stick it to the man are ultimately going to be sticking it to themselves.
They only hurt themselves with their scheme. Not at all like what the guests on this channel do. This is a scheme. And Andrew Ross Sorkin is deeply concerned about this scheme. He's just really, really worried that average people might be hurt by this scheme. He can barely sleep thinking about it. He was so fraught with anxiety last night, he was almost late to Soul Cycle this morning. That's how much he tossed and turned beneath his goose-down duvet as he pondered the fate of America's beleaguered middle class. Which is hilarious. But even if you were to believe it, it's a little late, honestly. Where was Andrew Ross Sorkin for the last dozen years as the central bank shoveled trillions to Wall Street, thereby enriching a few, devaluing the American dollar, guaranteeing hyperinflation, and of course destroying the value of the average person's savings? Did Andrew Ross Sorkin even notice that any of that happened? The Reddit guys noticed. That's why they're mad. Janet Yellen might have something interesting to say about all of this. Janet Yellen ran the Federal Reserve for years, beginning under Barack Obama. As much as any single person on earth, Janet Yellen is responsible for creating the distorted financial system that made the Reddit revolt possible, indeed inevitable. So where's Janet Yellen now? And what does she have to say for herself? Oh yeah, as of last week, Janet Yellen is Joe Biden's Treasury Secretary. Here's what Joe Biden's flack had to say yesterday about Janet Yellen.
I'm concerned about the stock market activity we're seeing around GameStop, and now with some other stocks as well, including the subsidiary or whatever, the company that was Blockbuster. And have there been any conversations with the SEC about how to proceed?
Well, I'm also happy to repeat that we have the first female Treasury Secretary and a team that's surrounding her, and often questions about market we'll send to them. But our team is, of course, our economic team, including Secretary Yellen and others, are monitoring the situation. It's a good reminder, though, that the stock market isn't the only measure of the health of our economy. It doesn't reflect how working and middle-class families are doing.
So, as her first answer, Jen Psaki is, quote, happy to repeat that Janet Yellen is the first female Treasury Secretary. Let's translate. Actually, Janet Yellen has nothing to say about Reddit or GameStop or short selling or even the dangerously corrupt condition of American finance more broadly. She hasn't thought about those things, probably doesn't even care. Janet Yellen herself has made millions from hedge funds, including from funds that lost money to the Reddit guys. But whatever, buzz off. We'd like to remind you that Janet Yellen is a woman, and so are many of the people around her. These brave leaders have broken glass ceilings. They are empowered. And that's enough. We can't give you an answer. We won't improve your life. But we do have diversity, so you should be happy. That's their position. Has there ever been, in all human history, a clearer distillation of the essence of neoliberalism than that? Probably there never has been. Maybe at this point, people...
All right, I'm out of here. So I got one commission done. That's the only commission I have right now. Oh, well, no, that commission's finished. That commission's done. You know what I should actually do before I get up out of here? Honestly, I've been saying this for a while. I might have my girl help me do that though. The varnish, the toe drum. I've really been procrastinating on doing that, but gotta get that done. So that commission is finished, this commission is done, and it's back to my own work. I have 2 other commissions kind of lined up, but I have an invitation to do an art show in November. I definitely want to try to get this piece done, and maybe the next one. I don't know if I can finish that one before November, but I'm gonna work on this a little bit before I jump back into any commissions, yo. I need to really get some more of my own stuff done. I love the commission works, but I love doing my stuff just as much. So we'll see. What was that? Well, I'm out of here for this evening. Let me make sure my brushes are clean because I'm notorious for leaving dirty brushes and just basically fucking them up. That's all good. Laptop's off, speakers off, overhead. Big light is off. Let me grab my iPad, which just charges so fucking slow. And catch you guys next time. Peace.